So we're going to be talking today in this episode about why you shouldn't buy a private jet. And I think this is really, really important because people, look at this, and so we're going to be talking about reasons not to buy, and then we're going to be talking about why people actually do buy and the differences in that. This will probably, hopefully, help you with your choice. Now, my name is Fabrizio, I'm your aviation advisor, also the author of the book, The Quantum Economy. I'm also an airline transport pilot with thousands of hours flown private jets and also airliners around the world. So I'm here to share my expertise with you today, like I have on all the other videos we have here on BizJet TV and my articles in Avbuyer magazine. So, click and have a look around at the other videos. But anyway, let's get into the crunch today of this episode. So why would you not buy a private jet? Well, buying a private jet is very, very expensive ordeal. Now, you've got to buy the airplane, pay the legal fees, a pre-buy inspection, set up an SPV into which put the airplane. But, there are costs involved and buying the aircraft itself. And how much does a private jet cost? Anywhere from $200,000-$300,000 all the way up to $100 million, depending on what you're looking for and how crazy you want to go. The interiors are usually quite expensive thing. If an airplane's going for $100 million, it's usually an airline has been turned to a private jet and they've done all sorts of gold plated or gold this, gold that in the airplane. And there's some people that have really spent exorbitant amount of money on an airplane, but let's not go down that route. So the cost to buy the airplane. The next cost is the running costs. And that's divided into two categories. You've got the fixed and the variable costs. Fixed costs are things like hangar maintenance, pilot salaries, some of the maintenance, and then you've got the variable costs such as fuel. You only pay for fuel when you fly. Landing fees, airway fees, handling fees, catering, all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to buy like a Gulfstream G5 or a Global Express, whatever, we're talking about $10 to $15 million to buy and probably 3, 4, 5 million a year to run this airplane. So it's a lot of money. So that's reasons not to buy a private jet because, of all the costs and the hassle that goes and comes along with all that cost. The airplane down because it's an unexpected maintenance event, or the pilot's sick, or the pilot's left, you've got to find another one. All these kind of things which you don't get when you fly with the airlines. Now, the other factor, and I talk about this quite extensively here on BizJet TV and in my book, The Quantum Economy, is the safety record. And this is something hardly anybody is talking about. The safety record in private aviation is 9.2 times worse than the airlines. Now, recent research come out and said that if you're flying on a private jet and it crashes, private jet crashes are 200 times more fatal than airline crashes. So, not only is it more expensive, it's also more dangerous. So why on earth would someone buy a private jet? Well, I'll tell you why. Now, if we look at the number of jets, add the turboprops into it, because turboprops can be also an efficient way. You may not need to buy a jet initially, maybe buy a turboprop. The jets in the world is about 22,000. You add the turboprops to it, we're talking about 45,000 aircraft worldwide. Now, 45,000, considering that some people have more than one airplane. So, how many people? 35, 40,000 people, tops, actually own a private aircraft. So why would these 40,000 people choose to buy an airplane if it's more expensive and it's more dangerous? Well, the danger bit, not many people realize that. And this is what I don't understand. When people are buying an aircraft and they're not going to fly it, well, there's two aspects to it. You either buy a plane and you're going to fly it yourself. And if you're going to fly it yourself, you've got to get adequate training. And adequate training is not the minimum requirement. There's a lot more to it. So I do suggest talking to somebody like myself, and I'll explain to you, what you need to be doing training-wise. Simulator, upset recovery training, recurrent training, evidence-based training. It's a lot more than what, the usual broker out there is going to tell you. Oh, yeah, the training's $35,000 a year. You go twice a year. You can go once a year to the simulator for a couple of days, and that's it. No, if you're going to fly the airplane yourself, you really need to do it professionally. You got to know your stuff, or hire a professional pilot which can look after you. So you do some of the flying, they do some of the flying, but they do mostly the management of the flight, and that's all a good thing to do. That's what John Travolta does. He has a team of pilots that look after him and look after the planes, and he jumps in the seat and does a bit of flying himself, but he has them manage the whole thing, even though John Travolta is a very, very good pilot and very competent pilot, unlike a lot of these people that fly their own airplanes. So that's one aspect. The other aspect, if you're going to buy the airplane and you're going to hire pilots to fly for you, don't go cheap on the pilots, because believe me, when you're buying an airplane, the most important thing are the pilots, not the plane. And when I talk pilots, you need to have good people. Mental health is an issue today with a lot of people and even with pilots. So you want to make sure you get people that are mentally stable. Their home life, wife, kids, and that. Usually people that are married with children and have a good relationship with their spouse are mentally more stable. And I say this as a fact because years ago, I was writing for an aviation magazine in Italy when I was still living out there, and I had the opportunity to meet and interview Dieter F. Ogdorf. Great guy. He was a chief pilot over at Lufthansa, and he talked to me about his career, and he said, for 3 years, he was sent out to Arizona to run the flight school for Lufthansa. And while he was out there, he would have all these young people come, learn to fly and get their commercial pilot's license and that, and then go back to Germany and transition onto the A320 or the 737 as their first assignment as Lufthansa pilots. And he said he would meet with each one of these young people one-to-one, and he would advise them to find a boyfriend or girlfriend, get married, have a family, because that will do wonders for your mental stability as a pilot. And stay faithful to your spouse. That is really, really important. So that advice that he and I was early on in my career when I had this opportunity, and I'd just been married like 4 or 5 months, and I've stayed to that. My wife and I have been married now just over 25 years. We've got 4 kids, ages 23 all the way down to 16, and this has certainly helped me because flying as a pilot, it's not an easy profession. It's a lot of pressure. And in particular on the private jets, a private jet pilot is under a lot more pressure. I mean, you're going to a lot of destinations you've never been to before. Some of them can be tricky. You don't get the training that you get with the airlines. And here comes the aspect of training. Make sure that your pilots get more training than the minimum requirement. Spend extra on the training. If your training budget is 100,000, make it 200,000. Spend that extra money. 2 things will happen. Number 1, your pilots will be a lot safer, making you a lot safer and your business associates, family, whoever is flying around on your private jet. And the other thing, it will make them happier as well and they'll like the fact that they're doing extra sim training, they're doing upset recovery training. Pilots love flying. They love training in that. It's fun. And if you get them to do this, they'll be very grateful and they'll probably stay with you a lot longer. And they'll be better pilots. And it's a bit like if you have a baseball team or a soccer team or whatever team you have, professional team you have, and you want to bring in the top athletes or you want your athletes to perform at their best, you're not going to give them the minimum requirement training. Like, we'll just train 3 times a week, that's it. No, you want to up the training, and you also want to up the quality of the training in order for these guys to perform at their best. Now, I remember, so I'm a big Juventus fan, which is a soccer club in Italy, and Cristiano Ronaldo is one of the top players in the world, joined Juventus for 3 years. And I know some of the people at Juventus and that, and they were telling me that this guy would turn up for training before everybody else and leave after everybody had gone. And then he'd go home and he'd train at home as well. This guy was just he's an absolute animal at training. And he's like the top player in the world, but he's still at it. Even now, at 39 years old, he's still playing, he's still scoring, he's doing really, really well. But, this guy is really upping his game. And so if you can afford to buy a private jet, as I said before, it's very expensive. You spend, 15 million on buying the airplane, 4 million a year to keep this thing running. That's a lot of money. Okay. What's an extra 150, 200,000 to make sure that those pilots are doing the best possible job, keeping you safe, okay, and being happy and staying with you? And it's going to help their mental health. It's going to help you. Because at the end of the day, as I always say, the private jet is private. You don't want to keep changing pilots every 6 months or every year. And right now, there's a pilot shortage. So finding pilots is difficult. But when you find them and you find good ones, you've got to keep them because, the price of pilots is going up. People realize that if they want good pilots, they've got to pay money. But pilots don't just look at money. They look at roster, they look at time off, they look at training, they look at the environment, they look at the type of boss you are. They look at all these things and they want to make sure that they're treated well, like everybody wants to be treated well by their boss. So these are really, really important things. Now, going back to the cost of the private jet, you need to use the jet in a certain way in order for it to pay for itself. And that really is the key. And that doesn't mean chartering it out to somebody else. That's a really bad thing to do. Okay, because you have the airplane, it's sitting in the hangar, it's available 24/7 for you, your family, your business associates, and everything in that. But if it suddenly goes on a charter, you can't spring into action like that anymore with your own aircraft. Bear in mind, it's your own plane. You control the plane, the maintenance, the pilots, the train. You control the whole thing if you're not chartering it out. You know when it's available. You can sit down with your lead captain and decide, look at the maintenance schedule and decide when things are going to go, and then when the airplane's going to go down for maintenance. Maybe you don't do any business trips for those 3 weeks, or maybe you use somebody else's airplane, and through your pilots and your aviation manager, you can find the right airplane to use that has certain criteria. Because again, the safety record is really bad. So when you go out chartering, this is why I always say to people, never use these fancy apps that drive prices down, because those guys up front probably aren't trained properly. They're not performing well. The maintenance of the airplane isn't done properly, and that's why the crash record of these private jets is 9.2 times worse than the airlines, and the fatalities are 200 times more. So these are things to take into consideration. But private jet operations can be a lot safer than flying with the airlines if done in a certain way, which will cost you a little bit more money, but in the long run, it's going to keep you safe, and you're going to make more money because you're going to use this airplane as a business tool. And that really is the key. All the people I speak to, and times I've used private jets myself, it just saves you stacks of time and takes stress off you as well. And that really, really is an important thing. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of BizJet TV. If you haven't subscribe to the channel, give us a thumbs up, and also to get yourself a copy of The Quantum Economy, click on the link below. And if you want to get on a call with me and you've bought a copy of the book and you've written a review for me on Amazon, just email me a copy of the review and I'll get on a call with you for free, and we'll talk about the strategy for your private jet acquisition. What's the right airplane for you, going about hiring the pilots. And this is what I do. When you hire me, I not only find you the right plane, I do all the other bits around it, including setting up aviation management for you, finding the pilots. And when I look for pilots, I look through my network, and I look for, and my criteria is very simple. I look for a good man or woman that's got sound principles, that's not only a good professional but a good person. And if they happen to not be qualified on that particular airplane, we'll pay for the type rating. It's a lot better to do it that way than sort of restrict yourself to saying, okay, we're buying a Phenom 300. We only want Phenom 300 type rated pilots. No, don't do that. Let's go out and find the right people first. And if they're rated, great. If they're not rated, we'll pay for the rating. And if they're a good pilot and they're a good person, they'll learn to fly the airplane very quickly. It's not a problem. So that's all from Fabrizio here on BizJet TV. Check out this other video I did recently with Jason Crandall. He's a aircraft owner. He flies his own airplane. Very interesting story. So tune into that one, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.